This young man is from Boston. It's his first appearance on national television, and I think you're going to find him a little different.
Yeah, I had a dream that all the babies prevented by the pill showed up. They were mad.
This is Steven Wright. He's one of the greatest stand-up comedians of all time, and one line at a time has become one of the most respected voices in comedy.
And I love Steven Wright. Because of the odd left field nature of his brain.
I love Steven Wright. I remember the first time hearing Steven Wright being like, this is blowing my mind.
Why is Steven Wright not on Twitter? He'd be fucking destroying Twitter.
He's too good for it.
He's too good for it.
You're Steven Wright. Like everybody else, I always loved your comedy. You know, you're in that rare position where, you know, you are a singular voice.
Steve was so brilliant and so one of a kind, you know. Steve was a big part of it. I went to college at Emerson College with Steve, and he was the reason I got into stand-up. And Steve Wright got up and, you know, as you know, it was genius.
Sometimes when I'm talking to you, man, I feel I've wandered out of my league, you know?
And Steven Wright blew them all out of the water as far as I was concerned, because his jokes, there was no like basis in reality. So he really could do anything. He wasn't just talking about his wife or his family. And the joke was always like, how did he think of that? It just blew me away. And you would hear the joke a million times, and it was always funny. And I just thought, this guy's different from everyone else.
What Steven does is very different from what everyone else does. And that's one of the reasons he became incredibly successful incredibly quickly. The Tonight Show, HBO specials, Saturday Night Live.
Gentlemen, Mr. Steven Wright.
Grammy nominations, movie roles.
Look, I'm at the end of my rope, and I want to die.
And even an Academy Award, all in a 7-year span. Today, he lays low. He keeps to himself in Walden Pond. An occasional stand-up gig here and there, a movie role every now and then, but only when he really feels like it. His deserved reputation is one of a true artist, dedicated to his craft, and an individual of remarkable integrity. He's a unique guy, monotone, distant, and emotionless on stage, shy, but eventually friendly, lively, and talkative in person. I have had the privilege of speaking with Mr. Wright 3 times, each instance memorable and meaningful. These are my conversations with Steven Wright. Block Island lies 15 miles off the coast of Rhode Island. One of those beautiful, serene places where things just seem simpler. My family has spent a week in the summer there every year since 2008. And about 10 years ago, this happened in a bar called Captain Nick's.
Captain Nick's is a small local bar on Block Island. It's very old. Don't think they've done much to it. There's a lot of dark wood. It has a very local island feel. And they do have live music on weekends and sometimes throughout the week. And my husband and I had gone upstairs, and there weren't a lot of people upstairs. Most of the people were downstairs listening to the band. And Steven Wright was standing there listening, looking over, watching the band all by himself. I knew he would go to Block Island often. I didn't know at the time if he lived there or not. Since I met him, I found out he lives on the island most of the summer. He does seem to be a bit of, a loner. He likes to be by himself. I don't think he likes to be bothered by many people, but the first time I saw him, I was a little excited because I think he is a very funny comedian, and I've thought so for decades now. So I went up and I introduced myself and told him I enjoyed his comedy, and he didn't say much. He basically said thank you and asked me my name, and that was about it. And I said, enjoy the rest of the show, and got a picture with him, and that was the first time I met Steven Wright.
She came home and told my brother and I who Steven Wright was. We were kids and couldn't really care less about some comedian we'd never heard of. The next year, though, it happened again.
So the second time I met him, it was a weekend, end of July. He came walking in the doorway once again, and I stopped him and introduced myself again, and we just started talking about glad to be there and enjoying the summer and a beautiful day and looking forward to the band. And he ended up leaving, and we were getting ready to leave, and next thing I know, he came walking in a side door again towards me and my husband, my sister-in-law, and came up to me and gave me his email address and said, I want you to have this. If you ever want to come to a show, just email me and I'll get you some tickets to the show. And it was very polite, and it was very nice of him to offer that to me. And always nice, always personable, always willing to talk to me. Shy, definitely shy. he's taken aback at times when you go up towards him, but once you start talking, he's perfectly fine to have a conversation with you.
This year I decided to look him up. I had to know why the sight of this guy made my mom so happy. As it turns out, he's funny. Like supernaturally, unethically funny. And a type of funny I had never seen before. And he unlocked a sense of humor I didn't know I even had.
I'm a peripheral visionary. I can see into the future, but just way off to the side. I took a lie detector test. No, I didn't.
I like to read music and listen to books on tape.
I remember when I was 7, my grandmother said, "Steven, come over here." And I said, "What do you mean?" "I'm a nymphomaniac and I only get turned on by Jewish cowboys."
I can't really ever think of anything for the children to do, so I bring them down to the lake and I just explain to them that no one knows really why we're alive and eventually we're all going to die.
He wasn't just clever. He was operating on another plane of thinking. These were jokes unlike anything I had ever heard before. It only took 5 minutes of YouTube clips to realize that this guy wasn't just funny, but brilliant. And from that night on, I wanted not just to meet him, but speak with him. Ask him his take on anything and everything, because I could tell this was an individual who had fascinating answers for anything and everything. I would see him twice over the next few years, but couldn't work up the courage to talk to him. I once saw him walking up the ferry steps, but ultimately decided to leave him alone. Another time, I was on Payne's Dock late one night. I spotted him in a small bar called Mahogany Shoals, a small, dirty, grimy place where an old man with a guitar was playing sea shanties. I spotted Steven and made eye contact, and he started to shuffle around, and then he was gone. He has a tendency to vanish, appear and disappear, kind of like a phantom, but that just adds to his mystique. And that night was the last opportunity I wasted. On August 3rd, 2018, my parents snuck my 16-year-old self into Captain Nick's to watch a Rolling Stones cover band called the Blushing Brides. We kept an eye out for Steven all night, but no sign of him for hours. But as we were leaving, we saw him talking to the bouncer outside. My mom yelled to stop the car, we hopped out, and we approached him slowly as not to startle him. And that is when this photo was taken. I was more excited to meet him than he was to meet me. But I did get a chance to tell him how much I admired his work and what his comedy has meant to me. You'll notice his jacket in multiple layers. It was about 75 degrees out. That's just his style. The most remarkable thing he said to me went something like this.
The world to me is a giant, huge mosaic painting, little tiny squares. I mean, from the minute you wake up to when you go to bed, thousands of pieces of information come past your mind. And some of those squares can be connected, like something way over to the left. It's connected to something on the right. I noticed there's a common denominator in those two pieces of information, but no one's ever really combined them.
Not only did I speak with him, but he was willing to talk comedy with me. Some of its ins and outs, how he views the art form, and coincidingly how he views the world. Someone I respect so much was so kind, open, and willing to talk to me about the topics I'm obsessed with. I praised his work, and he accepted the praise uncomfortably, as many of the best artists do. I did not have to talk to him again, but I sure wanted to. Not just because I think he's funny, but because I think he's wise. A passing glimpse of him on a pickup truck was all I saw of him on the island the next couple years. 2021, we met again. I was with a couple friends on the beach when I noticed at a fairly unoccupied stretch sat Steven. Black sunglasses, light blue bandana, and sunblock smeared on his nose. As we were packing up, I told my friends I have to talk to this guy real quick. They asked me who he was, and I said it's kind of a long story. As I approached, he stretched his arms out for me to stop, as COVID was still on everyone's mind. I told him we had met before, to which he responded with, "Oh, I don't remember you." Once again, though, I had the opportunity to speak with a comedy icon. We talked about stand-up as a profession, inspiration, some of his influences. He expressed his love for George Carlin, and that in just a few days' time he was going to film a documentary on Carlin. We discussed Block Island's charm, our mutual love for the island, and the Red Sox, which you may have noticed he's a bit of a fan of. Everything I wanted and got in 2018 was experienced again, but this time I made him laugh. I made a joke about the Red Sox defense, and I saw him tilt his head back in laughter. I was elated. I was in heaven. He was so generous with his wit, his time, and his laughter. I got a rare on-camera smile from him. I, on the other hand, blinked. My friends thought he was homeless. I told them Steven's unkempt appearance reflects his delightful apathy for other people's criticisms, and that he is worth more than any of us ever will be. I got two incredible moments I will remember for the rest of my life in these instances. However, I'm greedy. I wanted to talk to him again, so I reached out to him through the email he gave my mom. I wanted to ask him questions about his career. Like I said, in a 7-year span, open micer, Tonight Show, HBO, SNL, Academy Award. When I reached out and asked him if he wanted to talk about his career, his response was a little something like this.
No.
However, he was willing to talk to me over the phone, casually, about comedy. This worked out for the better, because whatever is on his mind is more interesting than old, tired-out show business stories. We were able to have another wonderful conversation about comedy, life, and philosophy. Before I play the complete conversation, I'd like to mention one thing. He said this about George Carlin in that documentary I mentioned earlier. He said, quote, "Even though his mind was at this other level, he was like a regular guy. It's rare, to meet your idols and have them be nice, cool, regular people," end quote. Mr. Wright, that is exactly what you have been for me, and I thank you for stopping to have a chat with me. And now, my conversation with Steven Wright.
Is that one of the biggest perks of being a comedian? Every day, your job of going to work, all your coworkers are funny?
Well, in the clubs, like when being around all the comedians during that time, or if you're driving somewhere to go to a show or something, all the joking around is at a heightened level because everyone's at a heightened sense of humor. Yes, it is one of the perks. Absolutely.
Is it an environment where kind of like everybody feels like everybody just feels like kids, like nobody ever really grew up in a way?
I never heard it put like that, but I think that's true in the sense that being funny is such a light. Yeah, it is like a childish thing. It is like I think that's part of at least for me, the creative process is I don't take it like. I don't have a pressure on myself. I don't have a serious, like, oh my God, I need to make some more, I need to write some more stuff. I don't do it like that. In the analogy I have used, it's almost like a kid finger painting. Just playing, except this is playing with words. But getting back to all the comedians, yes, there is a childness to them, to us. That never wore off. It's like we're part of our minds are like 12, and it just never shut down. I mean, we have other things in our minds, of course, but the comedy is it's a fun thing. At least for me, it is.
Have you been around comedians who you think don't really enjoy it as much as others?
No. Everyone enjoys it. Every comedian I've met enjoys doing it. Yeah, when I started, it was interesting. I met a guy in Boston. I started in Boston, and I met one guy who didn't even want to be a comedian as a career. He just wanted to do it to see what it was like doing it, which found it was fascinating. He was a really funny guy. His name was David Allen. But what I found fascinating was why would he put himself on that tightrope in that pressure situation just to see what it was like?
Yeah, that is bizarre. To risk that public humiliation and that crushing feeling just to see.
Yes. And I never met another guy since then. It was in 1980.
Is it like an addiction for a lot of comedians where they have to get up on stage and they have to do it?
I don't think addiction is the right word. It becomes part of your being, like it becomes part of what you are. I mean, we're all been joking since elementary school or junior high. Everyone jokes, even as you know, people who aren't comedians. But you're joking, and then you start to perform. So you're writing. So then you're writing, and then you getting it in your head what you're gonna say, and then some of it works, and some of it doesn't, and then it's like that experience after years becomes like it's like embedded in you. It's part of your DNA to be funny. Like if for some reason I was told you cannot be funny anymore and write anything funny down, I couldn't stop it. It's like a rock going down a hill. I wouldn't write it down so I wouldn't be arrested. But they wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to stop it though. It's like someone wants to run. Someone loves running. Not someone who thinks, oh, I gotta go run. You know, the people who think, oh, it's part of their existence. That's why I don't really like the word addiction.
So you at least yourself view it as something you get to do every time you get up on stage.
Yes.
You one time we were talking, you said you're writing, it's like rain, where it kind of comes and goes sporadically. Do you think that's always the best way to get the best material, when it forms that naturally?
It is for me. I mean, in the very, very, very beginning, when I had not one piece of material, I did sit down to try to write the jokes on purpose, looking through the paper for different words and stuff, and I did that for about 6 months, and then I didn't do that anymore. I mean, the material is really from noticing the world, all art, really. I think music, books, film. Someone is noticing the world and then processing it and sending it back out. Like, well, this is what I think of what I've been seeing. Like before, when you brought up that I said a mosaic painting, like the world to me is a giant, huge mosaic painting, little tiny little tiny squares. I mean, from the minute you wake up to when you go to bed, thousands of pieces of information come past your mind. And some of those squares can be connected, like something way over to the left. It's connected to something on the right. I noticed there's a common denominator in those two pieces of information, but no one's ever really combined them. And that's what is it for me. But so I don't try to. I just go through my day, and sometimes it comes, like you said, the rain. It rains a lot. It rains a little bit. It doesn't rain for a while. And it took me a long time to not get panicked when there was nothing, because even when there was nothing, eventually there would be something. So then I realized that the nothing will be over at some point. That's with the rain analogy.
So every time for you, if there's been a slump, a spontaneous moment has always come and kind of taken you out of it?
Eventually.
Do you think a real dry spell can help a comedian out in a strange way? To have a period where they just got nothing?
A real what?
A real dry spell in terms of writing, where they just have a longer period where they can't come up with anything?
I don't know if that would be helpful, really. I don't think it would be negative, but I don't know if it would actually help.
Do you think there's let's say, a particular point of view that leads to great comedy, whether it's seeing the world as an absurd place or a beautiful place, or you think just any vantage point has led to the best comedy?
No, I don't. I mean, everybody is different. Every person, our minds are like fingerprints. Our brains are like fingerprints. They're not exactly the same ever. So the comedian is in this world. He's in the same world, but he's seeing things from a different angle than the other guy. I don't think there's I don't think it's like that. I think everyone is I don't think there's a specific better view.
Do you think then that's why a lot of ways humor can act as a universal language? How it's brought, like in a club you have so many different comedians with different backgrounds and beliefs, but they can come together over this.
The comedians and the audience, you mean?
Yes, because the audience is always made up of very different people, and yet they all are there for the same reason and have the same reaction to the same thing.
Yeah, the laughter is a great thing. I mean, it's a great thing. I don't want to be Mr. Serious, but laughing is great thing. I mean, it helps you get through your life, everyone's life. It's like an audio drug. It releases tension. It's fun. You know, the thing is, being alive, there's the world, and it's so serious, and it has so many rules, and this is supposed to be like this, and this is supposed to be like this, and everyone is trying to get from point A to point B, meaning living their lives, so everyone is going through all this stuff, and the comedians are pointing out all the insanity, the stuff that's not sticking into the rules, that the rules of this, but what if you look at it like this? So the audience and the comedian is like they're having fun pointing out the chaos, because the people running the world, who think they're running the world, try to organize it down to the last thing, but it's still chaos spilling over the edges. So everyone has that same experience, I think. You're just trying to get through this madness.
And do you think humor's the best way through it?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a fun way.
It's what's worked best for you?
I don't know. The analogy I just said to you is only because you're asking me questions. I mean, yes, it's fun. It's fun joking around with my friends. I don't even really mean the comedy on stage. It's been one of the joys of my life.
Why do you think it takes so long for a comedian to hone their craft? Because in no other profession does it take 3-5 years, sometimes longer, for somebody to get really good at it.
I think it's like anything. I mean, like a baseball player or a sculptor, or it just takes doing it over and over and over and learning from doing it. I think it's like anything else, the repetitiveness. Plus, I think, at least for me, I didn't notice this when I started, but thinking back, I realized that I was the student and the teacher at the same time. It's like one thing. You're teaching yourself and you're the student, because you can only learn from doing it. Being on the stage, you can think about it and everything, but you really learn from doing it. And your mind is soaking up things that work, things that didn't work. I just think it's like anything. It takes a long time to do anything good.
Do you think it's maybe one of the more instinctual professions where you can't really teach funny or timing in certain extents?
I think there's a part of that it's like it's just in you to a certain extent. Everyone knows in school the kid who's funnier than the other kids. You know, there's just something, it's just a built-in thing, random by accident. But I think you could teach it to a certain extent also.
You said how just being up there and learning on stage in real time is the best way. How does a comedian recover after they bomb? Because I know it can be a traumatic experience.
You mean when the whole set bombs, like?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's your drive to do it. Makes you go do it again, even though that happened. You know, it's just your inner, you drive. I really want to do this. So even though that's not a great experience, your drive to try to learn to do it overrides that, and then you go do it again.
Was that your experience early on? No matter what the show was, it didn't really deter you? You kept wanting to do it?
Yes, I did. And I got lucky because the very first time I did it, I went up there for about 3 minutes. That's all I had. And they laughed at about half of it. And when I came off, a friend of mine who I went to college with, who was already doing it, Mike McNeill is his name, I went over and talked to him, and I was all, like, disappointed because naively I thought more of it should have worked, which was just naive. And he told me, no, look, you never did it before, ever. You never said that material ever, because you never even did it before, but a lot of it worked. So then when I left that night, I thought, oh yes, because I wanted to do it since I was 16, and I was 23, and I said some things they laughed at. They laughed at some of them. So that, and from talking to him, that made me go back again and again and again, not thinking, oh my God, they didn't laugh at half. I was thinking, my God, they laughed at some of it. And they just keep going back.
I was thinking that is pretty good for the very first show, just to get anything. Because I've heard a lot of comedians say their first 5-10 shows, they don't get a single laugh.
Yes, that's lucky too. Yep.
Why do you think so many comedians have come out of Boston, and specifically your alma mater, Emerson? Because I have a few theories.
Well, I don't know about specifically the city. There is a lot of comedians that came out of Boston, and people have asked me that over the years, but I have no idea what about the city would be doing that. I mean, I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up out in the suburbs, Burlington, Mass, like 40 minutes outside, but I know what you mean. But as far as Emerson, I think Emerson, at least from when I went, I think the fact that you wanted to go to Emerson meant that you wanted to go there, that you weren't an odd person if you even wanted to go there. We're not all thinking that. We just, writing and television and radio and plays. I want to go there. I want to go there. So automatically, that's a screening process. You're a little bit off if that's your desire. So then you get in there, and then there's all these people who are a little bit off before they even got there. And then that just, then it's all heightened automatically. Just odd, creative people hanging out with each other. And then it gets even more and more. You're inspired because all your friends are odd. That's my theory on Emerson. What is your theories on Boston and Emerson?
Well, with Boston, I feel like part of it has to do with the Catholicism and how it's very buttoned down, especially back in the day when it was a factory for comedians, and a lot of those kids grew up and wanted a profession where they could be as creative as possible, as wild as possible. And I do also think that, son, I know you're a big Red Sox fan, and I know I think the 86 years of no winning put in anxiousness and kind of just this perpetual pain and complaining culture in the city, which I think allowed for comedy to grow because it's how people would cope with something like that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like both of those points. The Catholic and the torture of the Red Sox. I never connected that before. Could be.
Because I know you went to school with Dennis Leary fits both of those descriptions of growing up in the Catholic household and being tortured by the Sox.
Yes, I grew up Catholic also. I never connected it to that. But the Catholic, as you know, has so many rules that the fact you're doing comedy is like a thing of like, I'm pointing out I'm tired, I'm going insane by the rules. It's almost like a reaction to the rules. Besides Catholic rules, the rules in general.
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe one reason people ran towards is that there are rules to comedy, but in terms of the profession itself, there's no real boss. And there's
yes. I mean, to try to have a career out of what you think, what you're noticing about how crazy the world is.
How important do you think it is for people to take risks in comedy and push their boundaries? Because I know someone you looked up to, George Carlin, did that consistently.
Well, yeah, he's a genius at that. You have to take risks or nothing. You won't know anything ever. I mean, you won't progress. Most of my jokes don't work. For only 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 that I write, only 1 in 3 or 4 gets a big enough laugh to stay in my show. That means 3 of them didn't work. That means I've stood there saying these jokes with getting total silence back. But that's what you have to do. If I didn't try them, I would never know anything. But, I mean, and George Carlin even changed his style of doing it besides the actual material. With anything in life, you got to take a little bit of a risk.
I don't think I've ever heard you use any like profanity or perverse material in your act. Do you think clean humor is superior? Because some clean comedians will look down on dirty comedy.
No, by the way, what time is it?
What time? It's 3:28.
Oh, okay. No, that's funny you asked that question because I never swore. I mean, I've sworn over the years. I broke all my rules, but I wouldn't swear or talk about sex or talk about drugs. I had all that, and that was from growing up Catholic. I mean, I would say all these things to my friends, but it was like, you can't say that in front of these people. It's not that I think it's better. That's how I didn't know that either till 15 years later when I thought back on it. Why am I not saying any of this stuff? Oh, because how I was raised. Also, when I started doing comedy, cable television was just coming in. I didn't want to build up material that I couldn't do on regular national television if I ever got the chance. I didn't want to have all this stuff that couldn't be said anyway. So both of those reasons, but the first reason was how I was raised.
So you kind of came from that last crop of comedians who built their acts based off of, I can do this on The Tonight Show, or else the material is basically worthless.
To me, it's so hard to come up with material that I didn't want to waste time piling up stuff, going through all that if I couldn't even use it.
Did you think the explosion of cable and HBO doing all the specials in the 80s was good for comedy, to have that other resource?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because before HBO, nobody saw a comedian do an hour of material other than if Richard Pryor, he had those movies. I think he had 2 of them or 3 of them. I saw those in the movie theater. But, so cable made it more, more of a frontier, a whole hour for the audience and the comedian. And you could say anything because it was cable. I think there's more comedians now, great comedians, I mean, than ever before, ever. There's so many amazing comedians at this time in history. This time in history, I mean in the last 10 years, 5 years. It's fantastic.
There's so many more outlets now that every talent can basically get discovered one way or another.
Yeah.
Who have you liked over the last 10 years or so?
Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Hannibal Buress, Bill Burr, Jim Gaffigan, I can't even remember some of them.
It's a good group.
It is. They're all like Ron White, Paula Poundstone, Larry. They're all excellent. If you made a list of amazing comedians in like 1978, in my opinion, it wouldn't be that long. It wouldn't be as long as that list.
Because Carlin and Pryor were probably the only two that got major exposure, and then it was maybe Flip Wilson down the line and a handful of others that were more obscure or niche comedians.
There was some, Pryor and Carlin and Robert Klein and David Brenner and Steve Martin. But that's not as long as the list that I just said.
No.
And I'm not saying 5 of them because I can't remember them right now. I think it might feed off itself, the comedy. So then you grow up. I saw the comedians when I grew up. Then, and then there's cable. So we grow up with cable. Then you see all the more specials, the more comedians. Then the internet. Then there's more and more and more, and everyone's seeing more. So then it's going in their head, and it's inspiring them and jazzing them up, and they're learning from watching people. And it's feeding off itself. That's my theory.
I think comedy's also a lot more spread out now, where with the internet, you don't have to be on one of the coasts. There's successful comedians who live in Austin or Chicago.
Yes.
And I know you've lived in both LA and New York. Comedically, was one superior than the other?
Well, I don't know if superior or not, that there was better comedians. There were more comedians in Los Angeles. Way more. But I don't think that meant they were better than the ones in New York. At least when I lived in both of those cities in the 80s and 90s.
So I first saw you on Conan and Craig Ferguson, and I imagine talk shows can feel like a chore when promoting something, but you always seem to really enjoy them. Did you always get something out of that experience of being on a talk show?
What was the Conan and Ferguson, did you say?
Yeah, that's how I first saw you, and you always seem to really enjoy being on the show with them and joking around. Did you always get something out of that late night experience?
Yeah, because it's so different. I mean, stand up, you're doing it alone, and then you're talking to these. I mean, remember I told you joking around? I tell you, with the Emerson student, even the joking around was at a higher level. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
So these guys are top comedians. So you're joking around with these other hilarious. I enjoyed it. Yes. I enjoy it, but because it's not being televised, there's a pressure to it. But you gotta just go through it. I like both of those guys.
And it's funny, that was one of my theories of why a lot of comedians liked it, is because for 5 or 10 minutes they get to be in a comedy duo, which I imagine is so refreshing for someone who is alone as a profession.
That's exactly right. I never heard anyone say that before either. It's like you're in you have a partner, you have temporary working partner, especially with Ferguson was eventually we would just, after many appearances, we would just make everything up as it went along. And if I said, he's so amazingly funny and fast, if I said something that didn't work, which a lot of the times it didn't work, he would say something that would work. So he would so it kept it funny all the way through.
He would do no pre-interview, correct?
No, he would. They would do a pre-interview, but then he would get out there and then he would ask maybe one question from it and then not go to it anymore.
That's amazing that all that amazing stuff could be so improvised.
Yes, a comedy team. That's what I used to tell people. We were in a temporary comedy team.
And the same, I think, with both those guys, how quick and bright both of them were. I imagine that must be so relieving when a comedian's on and they don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
Yes, I would imagine. I didn't think of it from their point of view, but yes. I don't know how they do it every night. I don't know.
I imagine that is one of the most taxing jobs in show business. 5 hours of TV a week. a lot of artists of any field will look back on their early work with some kind of disdain. Is that your case? Or are you still very proud of your early stuff?
That's another question I've never heard. No, I didn't. No, I mean, I had, in the very, very beginning, I had material that wasn't abstract one-liners. Like, most, like 60% of it was. But there was some that was more like normal-ish type humor. And then the more that I did it, like, then that dropped away in the first less than a year. So it was all surreal. But there's nothing where I look back and, like you said, like, just disgusted. No.
Your very first time you went up, you had the bilingual illiterate joke, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that?
No, I think I heard you say that somewhere else. And that's an amazing joke to have for your very first set.
Yeah, I really like that joke too.
And so you said it took like about a year for you to fully like form your style, I guess you could say. Have you like come up with bits or jokes that you really liked, but you felt like they didn't fit the act?
Oh my God. I think of things that I would be arrested. I mean, I think of, not arrested, but my mind is like a factory of humor, and you know, I think of things lots of times without trying to think of things, and then it's like, okay, then I have to judge, you know, I can't say this, even though I'll say it to my friends, but I have a certain guidelines to stay in.
So that's why your comedy is mostly very escapist and surreal, because it stays within the guidelines. It probably won't irritate too many people.
Yeah, unless you can get pissed off at the speed of light.
That's the joke about turning the lights on, correct?
What's that?
Well, I'm trying to remember. What was that one? The joke about the speed of light joke? It's like if you turn the headlights on.
If you were traveling at the speed of light and then you turned your lights on, what they doing?
What they doing?
Yes.
So, unless we find the one guy who's pissed off at the speed of light, you should be safe.
But what was the question? What was the question that you... Why was I talking about that I think of things I wouldn't say? I can't... What was the actual question?
Like, have you ever thought of a bit that you think would, like, make, like, a good, like, 2-3 minute story or a chunk that you felt, oh, it doesn't fit my act because people are expecting me to be this kind of comedian?
Oh, no, I misunderstood. No, I don't think of chunks. It's just specific things that I would have thought of that I wouldn't say. Because you only have so much control over your mind, I think. But you have control over what you can say.
That's a good way to put it. How would you describe the life on the road for a comedian? Because I know it can be a very grueling experience.
It's tiring. It's just kind of surreal in itself. Like you be in 3 cities in 3 days. It's just like the plane, the hotel, like the car. Then the show is like this magic portion. They're being at the theater for a couple of hours to this, like, where all the fantasy takes place. And then it's back to the hotel. Like, it's normal. It just becomes normal.
When you are on stage for that couple hours where the road doesn't seem so bad, do you find it very therapeutic, or do you get more of a rush from it?
It's more of a rush because it's just so tense. It's so intense to be in front of that many people. Everything is heightened. So it's like a rush, definitely.
So at the end of a show, is it something you have to like really come down from?
Yes, you'll be wired up for a few hours. Because you're staying right on, like, Yes, you're so focused. Like if me and you were in a room, I've do so many interviews. I don't know if I said this to you before, but I don't think I did. If me and you were in a room and one of us brought a glass of water from one table over to another table, that would be, that would be meaning, it's okay, you're moving the water. But if it was a play and the same tables were on stage and there's like 800 people watching the play, you bringing the water from one table to the other one, it's not the same, even though you're just moving the water, because you can feel the audience. You know what I mean?
That's very true. Do you often, in like the middle of a show, think this is crazy? That I am making people have a involuntary reaction simultaneously.
That's another question no one ever asked me. No, I have. It is. It's like they're having a physical reaction. But I haven't thought of that. But I have thought, if I haven't done it for a while, and then I'm at the theater and I'm beside the stage, then it's really magnified how insane this is doing this. It's like, are you going to go out there and make these people laugh for 85 minutes? This is completely insane. But when you're doing it night after night, then that becomes normal.
How long do you think it took you to have it feel normal?
Well, maybe normal's not the right word, because normal means normal. It's like I'm as used to it as I'm going to get to. I'm as used to, it's like if you're walking across a lake, a frozen lake, and it's cracking underneath you, every night for years. The ice is almost breaking. That's normal, but you're not really used to it, because you could fall in at any moment.
So that tense relationship with the crowd, it's always going to be tense, no matter how long you do it?
Because it can go wrong so easy.
That's probably one of the good things about it, though, is that you should never have the audience fully won over, though, correct?
You should what?
It's probably a good thing that the audience isn't always 100% on your side. That the audience will be honest with you, I guess I could say.
Oh yeah, they're honest. They don't care about anything. They're just judging whether it's funny or not. They don't care how known you are or anything. It's just down to whether it's funny or not. And during the show, it goes up and down, in and out, like waves. Like if someone was surfing on a wave, it's like it changes during the show.
Is sometimes when you're struggling with a crowd, is every joke almost like you're auditioning it for them and they're just sending it back almost?
If it's new, they're definitely being auditioned. If it already works, it works, it isn't. But the new joke, the audience they are editing the show. They're the editors. They don't see themselves as the editors, but they're in charge. They're in charge of what stays in and what is taken out by their response.
It sounds very democratic when you put it like that.
Yes, it's an overwhelming silence. Get rid of that one.
Do you think the road is the most effective way for a comedian to get better, where they have those kind of nights where they struggle with the material and have to go through it time after time after time to figure out what really works? Do you think the road is definitely the best way rather than just the same club?
I don't think that. Oh, in the same club? No, I think it could be done in one club. If you kept, the point is to go on as much as you can, whether it's one club or, like you're saying, the road. But if you're changing, trying material out in the one club, I think that's the same as doing it on the road. Okay. Unless you're doing regional stuff. Everything I talk about could be anywhere in the United States.
That's very true.
But I don't think it would matter which way you did it.
Can you think of a more fulfilling profession than making people laugh and smile for a living?
Probably Probably just helping people in the health industry, like doing something to help people's health.
Comedians obviously get the more instant gratification.
What's that?
Comedians definitely get the more instant gratification.
Oh yes. It's instant.
And yeah, I'll just have one last more. A question you've probably gotten plenty of times, but what advice, after your 40 years, would you lend to a young comedian?
I would say go on the stage as much as possible, because that's where you learn doing it. You're the teacher and the student at the same time. You can think about it, talk about it, but you don't really learn until you do it. Then I would say don't try any material on one person. Like, don't run it by your friend or something, because that's not a true test. The audience is a different energy. And when I started, I would try things on my girlfriend. If she didn't like them, I didn't do them. And one night I said a lot of them that she didn't like, and they worked. But it wasn't just her personality. I realized that it's different to try it on the crowd. Just do it as much as you can, and expect to have a lot of it not work. That's part of the game, to have material not work. And then you keep doing the shows anyway. And the more you do it, the more you learn.
Come up to my lighthouse, for I have something I wish to say. It can wait for a moment, well, in fact, it can wait all day. I just wanted to bring you up here so you could have the chance to see the beauty of this situation that you could share with me. It may seem strange to talk of love